Tonight on Arizona Wildlife Views, we'll take you into the canyons above Camp Verde and show you the latest in a historic restoration effort. Then we fire up the big bikes for a charity run to aid wildlife. But first, let's head to the White Mountains for a wild turkey translocation project.
It's early morning. The sun rubs sleep from its eyes. A light snow covers the landscape, deadening the sound of the incoming flock of turkeys, anxious to help themselves to yet another breakfast feast of cracked corn. The silence is eerie as they sneak into the outdoor cafe. Today's their lucky day. Deeper snow would force them to lower elevations and away from these easy pickings. Their usual food preferences, green weeds, acorns, juniper berries, and insects, especially juicy grasshoppers, are in rare supply during the winter. But today, they feed well. Nothing can interrupt this happy moment. Well, almost nothing.
We got in here well before first light, and we were hiding in hunting blinds a short distance away from the bait, which is attracting the turkeys. And then once the right group of turkeys comes into the bait, we have a little detonator that ignites 3 rocket charges simultaneously, and it pulls a large net over the top of the feeding turkeys. And then once the turkeys are under the net, that's when the fun begins. They're trying to fly away, they're hopping all over the place, squawking.
You'd be squawking too if your breakfast was so rudely interrupted.
Some of the other turkeys were running away, trying to figure out what happened to their buddies. We were running out of the blinds to try to get a hold of the edge of the net so that we kept the rest of the turkeys from getting out. It gets very exciting very quick.
While the crew scrambles to hold down as much of the net as possible, some turkeys escape until reinforcements arrive.
Shortly after they shoot the guns, we come up here on the hill and all sorts of birds, 42 of them I guess, under that net. Over there was Chris. The boys and I and John all got to jump in the middle of them and are on top of them, calm them down a little bit, and then pull them out of the net one by one. And now they're letting the boys, which is really a lot of fun for my sons, let them get right in the middle of tagging these birds and putting backpacks on them, aging them and sectioning them. It's been a lot of fun so far.
Mine's just grabbing boxes and just setting the birds in the boxes, helping them close the boxes up and having a good time. It was kind of fun. It's just you kind of had to be careful not to let them get away, but it's really fun.
Got one down there. Right by Joel. Alicia down here. Alicia over here.
I gotta tell you, it's one of the greatest feelings ever. Be able to be a part of something where we know our work is going to go towards putting some turkeys in a spot where they'll be able to breed and better establish themselves, and be a part of the conservation effort is something special.
Yes, something very special. Today's assault is actually the culmination of a very successful turkey translocation project.
We're in Game Management Unit 3C, south of Pinedale, Arizona, and we're capturing turkeys for a translocation to Mingus Mountain in Unit 19A.
This area was selected after careful study to assure that the local population wouldn't be adversely affected.
We're capturing birds in areas where we've seen good poult production or good young bird production from this previous spring. And we're also capturing birds in a unit where we don't have a fall hunt. So instead of us hunting these birds in the fall, we're using this as basically a transplant source.
The first release that was done to Mingus Mountain was back in the 60s, and there were about 25 birds. Those did real well until the late 70s. There were even hunts, and the hunters did fairly well, and then those birds dwindled out. Back in '91, there was a release of 50 birds to Mingus Mountain. Those came from the Bill Williams Mountain area, and those birds didn't take so well. So now we've caught birds yesterday and today. Those will go to the head of Ash Creek in Mingus Mountain, Unit 19A. The conditions seem to be right that the birds here in the Pine Top area are doing real well. Populations have grown quite a bit, and the The birds are, there's a few left on Mingus Mountain, but they're not doing real well. So this is a supplement, and it seems like conditions are right in that area too once birds are put there to reproduce and do well again. So we're going to see.
One of those favorable conditions is assuring a good mix of turkeys being released.
We got a fairly good mix of hens and younger birds. There weren't a whole lot of mature toms or gobblers. So hopefully after a few years the young jakes that we got will be able to reproduce and get that population going.
I think this will help actually balance the birds in other units, and I know there's lots of turkeys around here in this unit since the fire, and it's just helped the birds a lot, and I know that it helps with the populations of the birds, and I know it's really good for the turkeys, and it's just fun to be a part of it. Turkeys are the best thing in the world.
I think we pulled it when there were so many birds underneath it that all the birds jumping up like this was letting the other ones out from underneath it. It was crazy.
After the turkeys are removed from the nets, biologists get to do what all biologists like to do: weigh, measure, attach transmitters, and all that other fun stuff.
You want it so it's not tight on their back. Feel how I can put my fingers underneath there.
It's fun, but I had a blast and had a really good time out here just messing around. We're kind of out here with the NWTF, and Game and Fish invited us out and just invited us to come see how it's done and just help them box these birds up and get them ready to transport.
Oh, all right.
While the kids all thought it was great fun, the parents had more important reasons for helping in this conservation effort.
One of my favorite things in life is to hunt with my kids, and I've gotten that because of the way that I was able to hunt with my father when I was a kid. And some of the best talks my boys and I have ever had have been out here in the hunting woods, whether it's turkey hunting, deer hunting, elk hunting, or otherwise. And you know, the one thing I'll always be grateful for is I've got kids that like to be in the woods, and it's largely because we're outdoorsmen and we enjoy being out here rather than on the streets. And I appreciate that. And the NWTF and the Game and Fish afford opportunities like this for my kids to be involved in something.
Well, you know, there's a lot of guys who live their whole life to get an elk tags in the rut so that they can hear that bull bugle, and I got to tell you that for me to be sitting in the woods with my back against a tree and have a tom turkey thumping and gobbling and doing his thing is just as exciting, if not more exciting, than being out with those elk.
And of course, the ultimate goal is to be able to hunt these re-established flocks someday.
It's hard to say when they'd be able to hunt. It depends. When the birds were transplanted in '91, there were about this number of birds, 50 birds, and those were never huntable. The population never took off where we felt comfortable in opening a hunt in that unit. So we'll have to wait and see. These birds have a radio transmitter on them. Of the birds we caught yesterday and today, 20 birds receive those transmitters, so we'll fly once a month and be able to tell where those birds went and what the mortality rate is. If the population seems to be doing well, maybe in a few years we can open just a real limited hunt on turkeys.
As with all Game and Fish projects, we couldn't have had so much success without the dedicated support of our volunteers and cooperators.
The National Wild Turkey Federation supplied a lot of the funding to allow us to go to a unit where the turkeys are doing well and then release into a population that needs a bolster. Also, the private landowner on Mingus Mountain offered a release site there that he's got plenty of water with stock tanks and plenty of food up there, and he allowed us to go onto his private land to release these birds, so we appreciate all that help.
I truly believe that if people can experience wildlife and nature and the beautiful, you know, country that we live in, I believe that it'll be something that they'll grasp onto and that they'll be able to enjoy, and that they'll make it a priority in their lives to be a part of nature, to be a part of the woods, and a part of conserving these wonderful animals we have.
Well said, John. Well said.
This is not the type of activity you would expect to see or hear in the picturesque canyon above Fossil Creek, but it certainly is a sign of the times. What began as a marvel of engineering in 1906 is now becoming a marvel of deconstruction as crews work to remove 2 power plants and the network of wooden and concrete flumes that carried water to them. This project is the final step in the rebirth of 14 miles of Fossil Creek. But to appreciate the magnitude of this today, you need to understand a little about the history of this area. Fossil Creek is a rarity in Arizona, a spring-fed creek that provides reliable water flows year-round. At the turn of the century, its location upstream from mining operations and growing towns proved irresistible to dam builders, and the diversion of Fossil Creek began.
When the project was built, it was started in 1907, and initially it was just meant to build one plant, which was a child's power plant down on the Verde River. In 1915, they decided that they could put another plant in right here, which is the Irving plant. We've got one unit in the Irving plant. The wood flume started at the dam, ran it down the side of the mountain, and brought the water into the Irving plant. After it goes through that plant, it goes back into the original flume for Childs.
The old wooden flumes still cling to the sides of the canyon, a reminder of the Herculean effort that must have gone into building them 100 years ago.
The project construction of that magnitude had to be pretty daunting because, as you can see, this whole area there were no roads. All there was a big long canyon with lots of water running through it. So all of the equipment that was brought in, the labor was brought in on horseback and mule trains, and that sort of thing. A lot of the concrete that was mixed and poured was done right on site.
Mike Stewart has been the manager of the Irving Power Plant and lived on site for over 10 years. Now he's in charge of the removal project. With all the time he's spent in the canyon, he knows how important the area is to local wildlife.
There's just about everything here. The elk don't come down this low, but we've got mountain lions. There's lots of javelina in this area. There's eagles. We see eagles quite often. The common blackhawk, which is a blackhawk with a white stripe on his tail, there's lots of those that nest in this canyon.
The 2 plants were still producing about 4 megawatts of power in 1999 when Arizona Public Service decided voluntarily to shut down operations on the creek and decommission the plants. Several years of planning and preparation were required before the decommissioning could occur. The Arizona Game and Fish Department worked hand in hand with many other agencies, including the Bureau of Reclamation, U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and the U.S. Forest Service on a native fish restoration project in advance of the return of full water flows.
Partnerships in wildlife conservation are the only way that the Arizona Game and Fish Department can accomplish some of our objectives. The Fossil Creek Restoration Project involved numerous federal partners, Arizona Public Service as a private entity, non-governmental organizations, environmental groups. All of these people have an interest and a stake in what happens to wild places and wild animals in Arizona. The only way we can manage them is working with them to help us formulate and make decisions on the future of wildlife in Arizona.
But restoring full flows to Fossil Creek meant more than just shutting down the plants and opening the gate. The Native Fish Restoration Project took years to plan and included building a barrier about 2/3 the way down the river to keep non-native fish from swimming too far upstream. Once the barrier was in place, the native species had to be caught and removed from the stream, which was no simple task. To keep the stress on the fish at a minimum, they were long-lined or flown out by helicopter in 55-gallon drums. Once the barrels were safely on the landing zone, they were trucked a short distance to special holding tanks and into the care of experts from the Arizona Game and Fish Department hatcheries.
I'm happy that I'm part of this, and I enjoy what I do, and I enjoy what our department does to ensure that we maintain the environment, maintain our fish populations and big game.
The native fish that were salvaged included speckled dace, round-tailed chub, sonora, and desert suckers. After Fossil Creek had been cleared of the non-native species that were a threat to the native fish, the process was reversed and the salvaged fish were returned to the creek as quickly as possible.
Yeah, what you just have to watch out for on these when you have a long line, a 100-foot line, is when you get down, some of these holes are in between the trees. You want to make sure that the hook goes down nice and straight. You don't want to get anything where it's oscillating around when you got a load on it. You don't want anybody to get, between the load and a hard spot of rock or anything.
This is probably one of the greatest projects I will ever work on in my entire life. This is the kind of project we all dream about doing. You rarely get 9.5 miles of stream that are just given back to you.
To give the fish a chance to recover, the Arizona Game and Fish Department has closed Fossil Creek to fishing until December 31st, 2008. The department believes the area could one day become a blue ribbon fishery for round-tailed chub. In June of 2005, the diversion dam was officially closed and Fossil Creek roared back to life. Prior to having 95% of its flow diverted to the power plants, Fossil Creek supported a distinctive aquatic ecosystem. The highly mineralized water resulted in travertine dams that created large pools and cascading waterfalls. Now that the full flow of 43 cubic feet per second has been restored, those dams, pools, and waterfalls are expected to rebuild naturally over time. With tourists already flocking to the creek to play in the cool water, APS began the less glamorous job of removing the remains of the power plants.
We shut down in June of 2005 with a proposed schedule of almost 5 years. It's going to take us, by the time we get everything cleaned out, and because a lot of the work, once we get everything out, has to be recontoured. We have to reseed with native vegetation. So it's going to take 5 years. It'll be the middle of 2010 before we're done. The reason for demolition of the flume is we have to put everything back to its natural state. On the concrete flume, which we just went down and looked at, watched them take out, that's a little easier than the wood flume that we're taking out up above Irving is on. It's like railroad tie timbers, and it's all on trestle. It's a little more hazardous, and it has to be taken out because of that, because we have a lot of tourists come into this area and it's not safe to leave it there.
Two of the structures at the child's site will remain as historical elements so that the plants that once powered early Arizona and the people who built them won't be forgotten. To help protect the creek's future, it has been proposed that it be added to the nation's Wild and Scenic Rivers program. That designation would help preserve the character of the creek while still allowing access to the public lands that surround it.
On February 18, 2007, Arizona motorcycle riders participated in the family-friendly Biker Soar for Wildlife poker run, benefiting sick and injured wildlife. This yearly fundraiser helps with the care and rehabilitation of animals at the Arizona Game and Fish Department's Adobe Mountain Wildlife Center and is hosted by the Wildlife Center's Auxiliary.
And amazingly enough, this entire event has been put on by the wonderful volunteers at the Wildlife Center. We have only volunteers and myself. I'm the only paid employee there. And this event is to be a fundraiser for the Wildlife Center.
Volunteering is the giving of time and energy through a third party, which can bring measurable benefits to the volunteer, individual beneficiaries, groups, organizations, communities, and the environment and society at large. It is a choice not motivated primarily for financial gain or for a wage or salary.
I'm a volunteer. I've been volunteering for about 9 years.
Live out in Gilbert, moved out here with a handful of my buddies. trying to support the W Mountain Wildlife. Yeah, very good program. My daughter wants to be a vet, so I'm out here kind of doing this for her.
The whole family is sure to have fun with a variety of activities, including the poker run, wildlife exhibits, and a raffle for prizes. Riders travel from Jalapenos Mexican Cafe, located at 35th Avenue and Northern, to Pioneer Living History Village off of Pioneer Road and the I-17. Pioneer Village is a reproduction of an old western town from the 1800s. It's a beautiful site with its historical buildings. By the looks of all these bikes, it's a hot spot today. But seriously, if you're looking for a great cause the whole family can participate in, try the annual Soar for Wildlife event. With a variety of activities, live band, old motorcycle exhibits, and good food, the whole family is sure to have fun in the sun.
Love y'all.
Don't take my word for it. Ask our resident Golden Eagle.
This is the Golden Eagle. This is Magnum. He resides at Adobe Mountain Wildlife Center. It's at Pinnacle Peak Road and I-17. He came to us about 4 years ago from the northern part of the state. He suffered an impact injury where he was struck by a vehicle of some sort. He was taken to a vet up in Prescott and was treated there and has sustained some slight damage to one of his eyes and has a wing injury. Therefore, he cannot be released back into the wild. So after a lot of extensive work with him, he's used to do education shows and presentations, benefits, and things of this nature.
We are holding our second annual Biker Soar for Wildlife Poker Run. It helps us raise money for our wildlife center. We take in injured and orphaned animals from throughout the state, and we basically, work on donations and volunteer work. So this helps us raise money to feed our critters. As you can see, riders from all across the valley came out to show their support for Soar for Wildlife.
Yes, this is my second ride. I participated last year in the first annual ride for the Adobe Mountain Wildlife Auxiliary Group. So I was very excited to come back again this year and brought a lot of my friends to ride with me.
I'm in school. I'm a conservation major, so this really kind of falls right in line with what I would like to do career-wise. I like being able to bring something in that's wild, treat it, get it cared for, and release it again. That's our goal, and that really is what makes me happy. So. Founded in May 1983, the Arizona Game and Fish Department's Adobe Mountain Wildlife Center treats more than 1,000 sick and injured animals annually and provides wildlife education to local schools and outreach to community groups. Once an animal is rehabilitated, it is eventually released back into the wild where it can successfully live on its own. However, this is simply not the case for some unfortunate animals. Many that are seriously injured will need daily care on a regular basis for the rest of their lives. Those remain at the center and are often used in educational outreach programs.
We take in sick and injured native wildlife. We do the best we can. We have about a 60% success rate in releasing birds and animals back into the wild.
The center's mission is carried out with a small budget from the state's Heritage Fund, making fundraising an important contributor to the care of the animals.
It's a great cause. How could anybody not? It's the right thing to do. I think just from the aspect of, an endangered animal that wasn't, it wasn't meant to be in the place that it got itself or found itself. For us to be able to give back and help to put that animal back in its natural environment it's the proper thing to do.
There are hundreds of ways to help out. It's never been easier to find a rewarding way to give back and make a difference.
Well, no, anybody who's never been out here, come out, have fun, man. It's a great time, a lot of great people.
Definitely worth the ride.
Healthy communities depend on volunteers like you. Maybe one of these volunteer opportunities fits your interests. Please contact the Arizona Game and Fish Department for more information.
For more information on anything you've seen on our show, go to our website, azgfd.gov.